thanks for joining. We're going to sort of let people trickle in. This is kind of the vision here, and I'll just sort of break it down for you guys what I'm trying to do. So what I've noticed a lot of other creators that do the same thing I do, they all have kind of a live show, and they all kind of run it a little differently. But I like interacting with chat. So what I think we're going to do is chit chat a little bit for 10 or 15 minutes here at the intro. And then I'm going to pull up a story, do my analysis of it. And then I'll cycle back. We'll talk to chat, answer any questions you guys have about the story, sort of mix it up, and then move on to the next one, cover the next one. And same thing. We'll cover it. Any questions you guys have, drop them in chat. And after I'm sort of done my analysis, we'll answer questions. So that is sort of the vision. This is obviously all new. You notice that I'm doing, right, a different upload schedule, a different thumbnail style. Hardcore fans may have even noticed that it's not Combat Veteran Reacts, it's Combat Veteran News, because at the end of the day, I'm not really reacting. Like, I'm not a react channel at this point. I'm a news and analysis channel. That's what you guys tune in for. So I might as well tell new viewers, hey, this is what you're getting. You're not getting Mr. Beast reacts to craziest Minecraft compilation or whatever. So yeah. But we're gonna give people a little bit to trickle in, right? I see about 40 people here, which is awesome given that it's 10 a.m. on a Wednesday. And this might be a once a week. This might be a daily thing. Again, the nice thing is that because it's the summer, right? Ad rates are kind of down. This is the time to experiment. You see a lot of creators either take their breaks in August, or in my case, we're running experiments. We're trying all sorts of new different stuff. So it's a lot of fun. And obviously, let me tell me what you guys think about it in the chat. So it's also great to see you guys. Again, what do you guys think is, what do you guys think of sort of the new-ish direction? It's not really, like, I'm still doing the same stuff. I'm still doing analysis. And so the question that I'm just asking myself is, how do I reach the people who want to hear what I have to say most effectively? Right? Because again, by making, instead of one long video where you have to listen to every story, whether you care about it or not, saying, hey, here's 3 videos a day, maybe you listen to 2 of them, maybe you listen to 1. That seems to be what a lot of other people kind of in the space are doing. So yeah, and of course, partnering it with this live stream. So again, top chat, who's going to Alaska? Yeah, still waiting for that press pass. Something tells me the Trump administration not going to be giving me a press pass anytime soon. I literally think I'd be more likely to get a press pass from the Ukrainian president than the US president, which is honestly kind of fucked. Right? So shout out to Viper, who's a fighter on the Ukrainian front line. Okay, yeah. I mean, I appreciate it. Did you guys get a chance to check out my interview on Ukrainian TV on Channel 24? If not, I'll drop the link in chat if you haven't seen it already. Because, well, frankly, I think that was really, really, it was a lot of fun to do. I really appreciate the chance to sort of get the message out there. I appreciate Natalia bringing me back on. Again, I'm not always, I try to call things as they really are, or at least as I see them. So, that isn't always that isn't always going to exactly endear you to everybody. But again, that's kind of the point. So here's my interview with Channel 24. Let's see, will that actually take us to the right
Paul
video?
Lewandowski,
Perfect.
U.S. Army.
Okay. Yeah, so definitely be sure to check it out. And again, I wonder how their views are doing.
No.
Right? I mean, they're pretty good. Oh yeah, that was pretty good. Man, they put out so many videos. Interesting that they also have John Bolton. Also cool. Yeah, interesting. So, yeah, we're going to be talking. I see your questions for sure. I know exactly what you're asking. And yeah, again, the stuff about the breakthrough, the stuff about the ceasefire, that's all getting covered. Again, we're covering it all. So, yeah, don't doubt it for a second. But yeah, okay. Some people like get on the Joe Rogan show. I don't know. I don't think I'm quite big enough to get on Rogan, but one of our Texas legislators, state legislators, got on Rogan, and so who am I to judge? Who knows? I assume if someone emailed me and was like, "I represent Joe Rogan, we're trying to book you on the show," I'd assume they were a scammer, actually, right? Like it's gonna be the grandma. It's gonna be the grandma scam where like Joe Rogan is like, "Oh, I need $200, bro, to buy more fucking on it. Just float me, bro." And I'm like, "Okay, you're definitely an Indian scammer." Shout out to everybody chewing strike gum. Hell yeah. So okay, I want to shout out a couple of other things. The first is the donor box. We are so close because remember, every donation from here until we hit our goal is being doubled by our anonymous Dutch donor, who I've literally, I don't know who he is. Well, I mean, he or she or they, or it could be a company or something. So if you haven't donated, this is more crucial than ever. Again, when I texted my contact at the front, I was like, "Hey, what's the deal with this breakthrough?" He was one of the things he said to me. Again, I don't want to like out the whole video early, but one of the things he said, he was like, "Yo, these fiber optic drones are the real deal." So that's why we're giving them these defensive tools, right? The ability to detect them, the ability to stay mobile, the ability to cover, and of course, to help, as we talked about in yesterday's video, one of the units doing something that is a project that they can't fully disclose. So again, if you want to help these guys out building the next round of tech, but also stuff that's going to let Ukrainian soldiers go home today, this is what you want to do. This is where you want to check it out, right? Plus, 59th hooking us up. Plus, again, the Donetsk Oblast Ukrainian Sun flag patch, the patch of the free Donetsk Oblast. Of course, shout out to guys like Frank and Paul and Gamo and Anthony. Shout out to Anthony, fucking dropping a $260 donation. Hope this donation assists fertilizing Ukraine's sunflowers. Shout out to William. Long live the defenders. Long live democracy. Shout out to Deborah. Thanks, Paul, for your persistence and video supporting Ukraine. You keep us informed. Glory to Ukraine. Glory to the heroes. Camo McLean, Paul Hofstad, and Frank Stark. I'm telling you, this stuff is so essential. It is not like, it is nothing like, when people donate to us in Iraq and Afghanistan, or, me in Afghanistan, they'd send us like nice to have stuff, right? Like, oh, it's great to get like candy, or the good quality baby wipes, but the army provided people with everything they need. Like, no, in this case, fundraising is as important as getting water to your guys. It's just another part of the logistics chain, right? So if you're one of the guys who's a regular donor to these units, I mean, you are as important as the person who drives the water from Kiev to Kramatorsk, right? You're just another step in a chain that allows the fighting to happen. So thanks to all you guys that do that, really. I mean, truly, I can't emphasize it enough. Okay. The other person I want to shout out is our boy Sergeant Heine. This is the only right now Twitch strike gun partner, right? And he's a vet streamer. I think he's a retired Air Force vet, full-time streamer, famous, among other things, for his iconic gun wall. You can see it here. These are real firearms that he's got, all iconic firearms from different video games. He is a apolitical streamer, but if you're a gamer and you're looking for a chill stream, you want to check out Sergeant High. So I'm gonna drop his link in the chat too. Again, he's been an awesome partner for Strike Gum. You know, I see he's playing Battlefield 6. Maybe I should get myself spun up on Battlefield 6. And if you drop into his chat when he streams, I think it should be today or tomorrow. You know, ask him, be like, stream with Paul, dude. Stream with Paul. If there's interest, I will do it. Again, he has said, he's like, I don't do political fundraisers, so it wouldn't be able to raise funds for the Ukrainians, but we could do some kind of, I don't know, Strike Gum contest or something. But even if you just give him a follow, he really appreciates it. Okay, any last minute questions? And then we're gonna crack into the first story. Interesting. People are like, Battlefield is quasi Roblox. Uh-oh. I don't know if you guys ever read the Hindenburg research before they wrapped up operations. They were a short selling firm, and they basically took a really strong position against Roblox, arguing that Roblox is basically faking its numbers, unsafe for kids, and essentially a scam operation. Are doing some real scammy things, but obviously that didn't work. Roblox stock is unbelievably high. Okay. Should we get into the first story? Let's do it. Has the Russian breakthrough in Pokrovsk been contained, or is it worse than anyone is saying? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. Let's try to talk about what's going on in this supposed Russian breakthrough in the East. Okay, so overall, in the last 24 hours, at least according to Deep State, the Russians have not actually been able to exploit their breakthrough, right? As you can see here, we're looking at Russian advances, but what's interesting to me is that the Russians almost are like back to running the playbook that they were trying to do earlier. So if you can see here, right, we talked about the fact yesterday that this Russian breakthrough is kind of bizarre in that the Russians have, up until this point, been very clearly trying to achieve the encirclement around Pokrovsk, right? This is both a logistics hub for the Ukrainians and also a entrenched fortification, right? Part of their fortress belt of urban areas that have been sort of formed a defensive line that Ukraine has invested a lot of money into reinforcing. But you can see that the Russians have been on this steady over the last, I don't know, we're going to say 2 months or so. You can see that they've been trying to create this encirclement around Pokrovsk, right? Here we go, moving forward in time. You can see that's so clearly their objective, right? Is to sort of creep forward and create this pincer movement in the Pokrovsk area. And then 2 or 3 days ago, the Russians, for seemingly no reason at all, made a hard right-hand turn and tried to thrust as deep as they could into Ukrainian lines here near Vesele. And I think the thing is, it both exposed, I think, a failure of the Ukrainian leadership. I don't think that's a secret. A lot of senior Ukrainian commanders are saying, listen, we were not prepared for this. We missed this whole thing. But I think it also reflects the fact that Putin wants to achieve some kind of symbolic win, some kind of battlefield success going into this meeting with Trump, right? And the interesting thing, though, is you can see, again, in the last 24 hours, there's not really any reports that this breakthrough has been exploited any further. And instead, even the Russians appear to simply be advancing in this kind of Nyan Kanarivka area, right? They're back to sort of trying to complete their pincer movement. They're not even trying to exploit this, because the two things you would see if they wanted to exploit it, you would see them go deeper in, which is probably not a great call given the prevalence of fiber optic drones and the fact that logistic lines are really, really challenging to maintain in this current combat environment. But what they would do, you'd think, is exploit kind of outward, right? They would try to consolidate their gains by making this more solidified. So the fact that we haven't seen either, instead, we've seen simply a Russian pivot seemingly back to some of these areas. You can see here, right? Sort of Viova, Nyan Kanarivka. This is just not this is just not the actions of someone who really thinks they've achieved a major operational or even strategic breakthrough. And this is really kind of in line right now with what the Ukrainians are saying. Again, this advance was significant in distance, right? 10 kilometers is no joke. But as we've pointed out in other videos, the gray zone, the sort of no man's land between the sides, thanks to the prevalence of fiber optic drones, is way deeper than anyone expected, right? Remember, when I was in Ukraine in November, you were looking at it like a maybe, I don't know, a 5 to 10 kilometer kind of gray zone. Now that gray zone is supposedly even deeper, up to 20 kilometers, where basically no forces want to operate, where Russians can't really, the last fixed Russian position is like 20 kilometers from the fixed Ukrainian position. And everything in between is just a drone kill zone. And the Russians are the ones who have to come out of their hidey holes and push into the drone kill zone. Now, the problem is, of course, if they're able to find a gap in the Ukrainian drone coverage, if they're able to if the Ukrainians sort of have one of those shift change failures, then you end up in a situation where the ability of Russian forces to advance can be considerable, but these are small assault groups. These are tiny assault groups, and taking a look here. Let's see if I can find it. Right. Well, they point out this is some of the analysis. According to Zelensky, these are small groups of Russian soldiers sort of carrying out these advances, mostly on foot and on motorcycles with no support from heavier armored vehicles. It's not really an exploitation. His statement is that, quote, some of these small groups have already been located, some killed, some taken prisoner. And he said the rest will also be found and destroyed in the near future. Again, this aligns with everything we've heard from other reporting that these are small infantry units trying to conduct a sort of infiltration operation, bypassing a porous first line of defense and looking for footholds to launch further attacks. But the Ukrainian brigades, even the military's top units, severely understrengthened infantry thanks to a poor mobilization process and, of course, the fact that, well, it's just really dangerous to be an infantryman. As a result, you're getting larger holes in Ukrainian lines, which Russian forces have sought to exploit with these small, stealthy infantry assaults. Again, chaotic is the word that's kind of being thrown around, and I think this is true. But again, is this really a breakthrough? And as they point out, experts aren't classifying this as a breakthrough, and I'm in agreement. I don't think what we're seeing as a breakthrough because you need a greater concentration of forces to achieve a breakthrough. So they just don't have that, right? These are the small groups of infantry breaching past thinly manned Ukrainian defenses. It's not a rapid breakthrough. I think it's just a function of this like ultra porous no man's land, right? But they say this could be part of systemic problems within the Ukrainian military that simply have not really ever come to fruition. And I think that's probably the best assessment and probably the most accurate assessment. Again, one other example here that I want to point out is that this article about Ukraine's effort to create a drone wall. And the drone wall is the defensive network of drones and also sensors that's less talked about that Russia continues to throw wave after wave of soldiers into, suffering heavy losses. But these fiber optic drones are something that, even the Ukrainians admit Russia can simply produce more of them. This is one of the technologies that Russia was actually first to field, right? Even the early drones, and literally just from 10 months ago, used commercial fiber optic cable, very heavy, very burdensome, very expensive. But these drones cost 10 times as much, but the math actually still worked out because they were 10 times as effective relative to a jammable radio frequency drone. So the Russians actually were like, hey, this is worth it if we can make some economy of scale gains. Now things have changed. The Ukrainians were late to the game developing their own fiber optics. But now fiber optic cable is so cheap. I mean, we looked online. You can, go online on like an AliExpress and you can search drone fiber optic cable spools. And you can see that you can get 10, 20, 30 kilometer spools weighing just a kilogram or two. For a few $100s, $200 or $300, and you put them on top of a $500 drone, and suddenly you're looking at an unjammable drone, and it's only going to cost you, not the $5,000 it initially cost, but the, a few, twice, maybe 3 times as much as a radio frequency drone. But that FPV drone is unjammable. So unless it gets literally shot down, it's going to be effective, right? And so these fiber optic drones, of course, deployed by Russia, have actually been somewhat effective at sort of evening the odds of the drone battlefield. Again, as they point out, fiber optic drones, the same tactics are being replicated across the front. These are Russia launching rapid motorcycle and buggy-borne assaults, putting pressure on Ukrainian flanks, attempting to encircle Ukrainian defenders, and fiber optic drones to degrade Russian logistics or Ukrainian logistics and vehicles. Even Syrskyi admitting that Russia has the advantage in the fiber optic drone race in quality and range and application. In part because, of course, China, the manufacturing hub of the world, is selling these drone parts to Russia. So again, we're going to keep you guys posted. Obviously, as I've said before, the issue is that true information is hard to come by. But if this were a true exploitation, at the very least, the Russians would be calling it that. And the Russians themselves aren't calling this an exploitation or a breakthrough. And so I think it's really, really easy. I can feel pretty confident that if the Russians don't think this is some kind of big breakthrough, it probably isn't. But again, we'll keep you guys posted as we learn more. So be sure to hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one. All right. So what questions do you guys have? And again, I appreciate you guys. As always, if you want to like jump your questions to the top of the line, be sure to you can throw me a super chat. I always appreciate it. Yeah. It's funny. Everybody's like the clips. Yeah. I know that's like a thing now. I noticed that's a meme. It's just to be like, clip it. Like when something crazy happens, if you were like a gaming streamer. So yeah, Jamson points out that, the economy of scale in this war, that's one of the other stories, right? That's there's a reason why Vladimir Putin went to an economist to run this war. And it's because when you have an economic, like everything, so much of things are an economy of scale at this point. You look at the Russian recruitment pipeline, where it used to be very difficult for them to get a soldier, sign them up, train them, assign them to a unit. It used to be total chaos, right? Now, it is grisly, but it is systematic, right? The unit, soldiers get recruited, they get trained, they get sent to the front, they get assigned to a unit, and they conduct these operations continually. So I think this is the same thing happens with anything else, right? Look at the Russian ability to produce Shaheds, which is growing exponentially. The Ukrainian ability to produce drones, which they estimate they're going to make about 2 million drones this year. And so the problem is that you have this dual need, right? Because you have to take existing technology and scale it, right? So you have to go, okay, we made these basic fiber optic drones. Now let's figure out how to let's order 200,000 of them and get the per unit cost down to virtually, down but 90%. But then you also have to say, well, we need the next generation of drones. So you got to find this blend between a lot of what you need today and engineering the next generation of stuff. Because again, as we talked about yesterday, there's already some of these countermeasures, right? Counter FPV, counter fiber optic drones being deployed. So there's some automated systems that rely on sort of directional mics to kind of listen for the drone and then automatically like shoot it down, sort of like an American CRAM system, like the poor man's CRAM, but they're very, very expensive. So again, the countermeasures will show up. It'll happen. It's just a matter of kind of when and how. It's interesting. Zahir Gali says, as a Canadian vet, do you think Canada should specialize in one military capability? Don't have a larger military be effective at everything? No, I think what Canada and other small militaries should focus on is the capability to scale. And so what that means is effectively the Canadian military exists sort of like the German military, and even the French military to a lesser extent, like any of these smaller militaries. They exist as a infrastructure to scale military operations. So in the event of a true conflict, remember, look at the Ukrainians. They are 4 to 6 weeks away from turning a civilian into an infantryman, right? And they're about 12 weeks away from deploying someone to fight as a drone pilot. And given that Canada doesn't really have any proximate threats, despite what Trump was saying early in his term, the military of Canada should exist to be able to scale up quickly to say, okay, let's say Canada needed to add 6 brigades, right, to fight in some kind of large global conflict. Well, what would those brigades need? So soldiers, they can train up. They're 12 weeks or 9 weeks away from those soldiers, from frontline soldiers. They need a structure of leadership. So someone who would be a brigade commander, the soldiers who would form the core of the non-commissioned officer corps. You would need to have trainers, and you would need to have some equipment to get a brigade stood up. And so that is how I think that would be a smarter way to operate these militaries. Even smarter would be to Canada say, listen, we have a small active duty contingent, right? It's like a pyramid. These are your active duty guys. They are essentially trainers and equipment maintainers full time. Then below that, you have a huge reserve component where you have, say, a lot of reservists, both drilling reservists, but then even more kind of low stakes, like, hey, you completed your military training, but you're still on a reserve list somewhere. And then below that, you have your selective service. And so that pyramid is what you notice. That's exactly what you would end up with in the event of a mobilization, a brigade, a command team and senior officers and NCOs. You would have mid-level leadership, and then you would have rank and file. So I think that's what small militaries that don't really have the ability to meaningfully conduct operations, I think that should be their focus and their specialty. All right. Should we talk about the Russian economy? It's having a bad time. Should we do it? Okay. Is the Russian economy gearing up for a 2008 style housing collapse? Just how close are Russian banks from falling apart due to terrible loans? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. Let's talk about it. All right, so this is an interesting series of stories from the Moscow Times, particularly around the Russian housing market. Now, this refers to past due and foreclosed auto loan and mortgage debt in Russia, which has doubled in the last 12 months or so as their economy starts to falter, right? And this is looking at, these are official Russian statistics, and you should take them with a grain of salt, right? This refers to the fact that delinquent housing loans are reaching almost 1.2 billion in the second quarter, a nearly doubling from the same period last year. Overdue loans climbed again by 85%, according to data from Russia's United Credit Bureau. And this is reported from pro-Kremlin daily news outlets. So again, the reality, I think, is going to be quite a bit grimmer. But the central bank has also confirmed this trend, saying that the 90-day overdue window is now 4% of all auto loans and about 1.1% of all mortgages. Right? They, of course, are like, well, we never should have loaned these people in the first place, blah, 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 blah. Saying that, oh, there was too many mortgages issued in 2023, 2024. I don't believe any of that, because the interest rates within Russia at this time were unbelievably risky. And again, while there was a lot of loans going out, they probably weren't mortgages and auto loans, right? They would have been actually the opposite. Instead of a loan to purchase a car, they probably would have been more likely to be a loan against a car or a loan against a house. But troublingly, by the end of May last year, these non-performing loans in at least retail, so non-business loans, were 5% or nearly 6% of Russian bank portfolios. And this is a problem because you know that these Russian banks count on the incomes from these loans in order to sustain their own operations and pay back the loans that they in turn are making to other companies. Because remember, large Russian operations and small Russian businesses go to banks and increasingly in an economic downturn and say, listen, we need some capital. We need a loan to float us until the economy picks back up. And banks can usually say, sure, we got you. We can give you a loan to sustain operations for 12 months, 18 months on the belief that your business will pick back up. The problem is the reason banks have that money is because there's a level of guarantee by the loans the banks currently have out. They say, of course we can afford to do that because every month, a million Russians send us their mortgage checks. And when they do that, that capital helps guarantee the capital we loan to you. The problem is that when the banks stop getting those checks, it becomes riskier to put money out into the world, meaning that fewer and fewer banks are going to get those loans and the terms of those loans are going to be substantially worse, right? That's why they say the quality of debt service in the banking market has sharply worsened. This means that fewer and fewer people are paying off those loans. And when they say credit risk is accumulating, that's what I'm talking about. Because when you can't loan that business money, or you loan that business money and then they turn around and go, hey, I still can't pay it back. I'm still not making any sales. I'm not sustaining operations. Well, now the bank goes, now it's another problem. And then remember, that small business says, hey, I can't pay my bank loan, but I also can't pay my mortgage. So now the bank is getting hit on both sides. So it can be very quickly an exponential spiral of non-payments. But how much is this in kind of the overall aggregate of the country? Well, one, Putin has ordered its central bank to cut its key interest rate by about 2 percentage points in July down to 18%, which is a pretty substantial drop. Again, that is if it was 21%, now it's 18%. You're talking about a nearly 10% cut. So that is a real significant decline. As they point out, real interest rates on consumer loans can get over 30% because obviously if 18% is what the bank is getting and then they need to extend loan to a risky consumer, they're going to want that extra 30%. And of course, as we talk about, the vicious cycle. But here's the thing. For context, is this going to be like a 2008 style collapse for Russia? Well, I don't think so. And the reason I say that is because in August 2008, right, as the crisis was kind of brewing, all U.S. mortgages, and it was about 9% of all U.S. mortgages were either delinquent or in foreclosure. So beyond 90 days are facing foreclosure proceedings. Within 12 months, this amount had risen to 14%. So you can see this is the exponential spiral we're talking about, right? So it took, again, years to go from kind of a sustainable, let's see if we can find the chart here. So you can see here, right? 2006, you see some rises in 2007, and then from 08 to 09, right? The mortgage delinquencies became an absolute train wreck, right? So this is pretty key to understand. So the thinking is that Russia may be, again, it may be like here, right? These are prime rates. So you can see that you're looking right here about 1%. So this could be, we could be looking as late as a kind of like this could be as late as mid 2008 for Russia if we use this analog, which like you got to be suspicious because you're talking about different economies with different sets of rules around mortgages, right? The U.S. is unusual in that mortgage interest rates don't automatically adjust. There's a bunch of stuff like that. But essentially, one of the analysts said that a critical threshold is about 5% delinquency. So you would need to see a 5x increase in mortgage delinquency, which again, as we point out, really was able to go from 1 to 4% delinquency. That took place really over the course of like a year and a half. And it happened pretty exponentially, right? So the first 2 or 3% we saw from that chart happened over the course of like 2 years. But then the next 10% increase in delinquencies happened over the course of less than 12 months. So that's not the only economic woe facing Russia, right? Because as we talked about, internet blackouts. This is, of course, essential to Russia because Ukraine uses Russia's own telecommunications network to guide their drones to their targets, meaning that in order to stop Ukrainian drones or try to stop Ukrainian drones, the Russian government just routinely blacks out the internet. But again, if you're a business, that means you're going to conduct cash transactions if possible. And there's a bunch of problems with this. The first is that, well, there's not really any record of cash transactions necessarily. Now, banks are saying, listen, we know how much cash goes out, right? They said about $2.5 billion in cash has gone out in June and July alone. So, about $1.25 billion a month. And they're saying, yeah, this is starting to tick up. But and they're like, well, it's probably because of these internet blackouts. But, from what we've heard, a lot of this is these internet blackouts, they don't happen necessarily during the day, right? Instead, what I actually think may be happening is a slow, gradual run on a bank. My thesis is because Russia, one, if you want to maintain a stable currency and you want to have like this continual level of state spending, you need to have some capital controls. You need to prevent the average person from getting their capital out of the bank and putting it into the economy. And so smart Russians, I think, are probably starting to see that. And as we point out, Russia knows they're going to have to impose capital controls because in June, the Russian financial watchdog of Russian Rosfin monitoring, brilliant, has been empowered to actually freeze bank cards and accounts for 10 to 30 days without court approval if suspicious activity is suspected. But given that this is Russia, this authorization to freeze bank cards is probably going to get used to not abuse suspicious activity, but simply to prevent Russians from pulling cash out of the economy, because it's essentially going to prevent a bank run. Banks, once Russian consumers begin to believe that these banks don't actually have their money in the bank, that they won't be able to get it out, there's going to be a run on the bank. People are going to want to hold their cash. And smart Russians that have been through other crises probably understand when they read this article that they knew what was going to happen, that this was the government preparing to ban Russians from withdrawing their funds. And once you do that, right, your funds, if your money is tied up for like 2 years in the bank where you can't access it, is it really even your money? No. Right? This is what happened in Lebanon 2-3 years ago. So I think this is actually, my thesis is that this is actually smart Russians saying, listen, we need to keep a lot more cash on hand, right? And there's, right, $2.3 billion came out, and cash holdings were actually declining. So I think that's a sign that literally, where are the rubles? I think they're under Russian consumers' mattresses, right? And boy, you read stories like this, right? Russia's VTB bank facing collapse in lending income as war pressures mount, right? So this is, again, income that they generate from loaning people money. So again, another surge in loan defaults. State-owned lenders' net interest income, right? Difference between earnings on loans and interest paid on deposits, plunged 49%. So literally, the difference between what they have to pay out their depositors and what they make coming in is narrowing like a lot and rapidly. Senior managers are signaling privately that official figures understate the severity of the problem, ding, 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 pointing to a loan portfolio in far worse condition than the public accounts suggest. The true scale, they said, is obscured by debt restructurings and opaque war-related lending. So this is, again, according to an earnings report, overdue retail loans rose by a third in 6 months to 5.2%. We just talked about this. But the real story is, again, that eventually Russians are going to get wise to the fact that the bank may not have their money. The money that the bank that they need to withdraw to pay for their groceries and to pay their rent, that is going to be tied up in the bank. That money is supposed to be being sent to them every month from loans, from mortgages, from businesses. And so the fact that VTB doesn't have it is itself a huge problem. Because why? Well, what happens if you're a Russian and you go to the bank and the bank says, actually, we can't allow you to withdraw money? Well, remember, some of those Russians are going to use it to repay their auto loans and their mortgages, meaning that a collapse is going to spread to another bank. And so as we pointed out, right, this is a fundamental problem with your independent statistical agencies and your reporting becoming politicized and inaccurate. It doesn't mean that it's not happening, right? What it means is that the delusion that your economy labors under, if you could measure the delusion of an economy, the official statistics versus the real ones, the further that bifurcates, the harder the crash is going to be. It's kind of like, it's like being an alcoholic, right? So if you or like a caffeine addict, right? Let's use a caffeine as an example. If I have 1 cup of coffee and then I don't drink a cup of coffee for a week, I'm fine. I have a real caffeine spike. I level out, right? And reality, and right, the stimulated Paul and the real Paul, like they don't differ that much. But what happens when you're like me today and I drink like 4 cups of coffee a day? Well, that means that stimulated Paul is way up here and baseline Paul's down here. And if I were to go cold turkey on caffeine, how bad would the crash be? It would be really bad, right? I would have headaches and nausea and tiredness, and I'd be grumpy and irritable, right? So this, you owe a debt to reality. At some point you go, damn, if I went without coffee, I would literally be in a lot of trouble. And so that is true of this economy, where the more you lie in official statistics, the further you disconnect from reality, the further that the Russian public, that other businesses and banks can prepare for the eventuality, right, of what's going to happen. Because the problem and advantage in sort of accurate statistics is that firms, individuals, if we see recession indicators in the official statistics and we believe them to be true, what do we do? What would you do if you saw a recession coming down the pipe? You'd hold more cash, right? You'd spend a little less, you'd hold more cash, you'd be better prepared. You might not, for example, quit your job to go to grad school. You might not take out a loan on a car. You might pause some consumption. Now, on the short term, that's bad. That actually helps bring about a recession. But in the long term, it also helps you recover from a recession. Again, think about it from a personal perspective, right? By not taking out that car loan, by not hoarding, by building up your cash. Yeah, maybe the economy gets tough for a while and you don't spend as much. But what you are able to do is pay your existing car loan with your savings. You're able to pay your mortgage, right? So your bank, remember that bank that's having kind of a tough time, it at least can count on your auto loan and your mortgage loan because you're paying it from your savings. Businesses work the same way. They say, listen, we're not going to open that brand new plant. We're going to save this cash to make sure we can pay our debts. And so what that means is that the recession happens, but because everyone is ready for it, it's smoother. It's like being at the beach. If you see a big wave coming, you're going to get hit with the wave, but you can kind of dive into it and sort of weave through it. But if you don't see the wave coming, someone blindfolds you or you're turning around, you can't see what's coming, you're going to get bowled over. It's going to be really dangerous. That is what we're seeing here, where the Russian consumer, the Russian firms, even the Russian banks are blind. Other than their own internal data that they literally will get in trouble if they release publicly, there's not really a way. Firms aren't going to be prepared. So that's one of the key differences here, is that, as we point out in 2008, some people were actually prepared, were hedged against this 2008 style collapse. Goldman Sachs famously offloaded all of their bad mortgage debt before anyone else knew what was happening. Obviously, the whole movie, The Big Short, about the firms that called it. But imagine if it was illegal to call it. Imagine if a firm called it and then Putin's goons showed up and arrested him on fraud charges or something, right? Nobody would be trying to balance the risk in the system. And that, I think, is the huge danger here. And you can see 1 in 5 Russian building developers at risk of bankruptcy as their mortgage costs continue to soar. But wait, you may be asking yourself. This is from 2 days ago. I thought the rates were cut. Well, what that says is that there's a risk premium, right? There's that property developers, the banks say, listen, there is some kind of real risk premium here that's not accounted for in official statistics. Do you see how, again, there's this disconnect to the market's statement of risk, which says, hey, the risk level is like 30% if you're going to build a new building. Whereas the official Russian government says, oh, rates can be cut. Risks are low, right? You could see, again, the new production of the brilliant Russian Lada sedan pushed back amid parts shortages and supply chain strains. So again, is this going to be tomorrow? Are we going to wake up and see the Russian economy has collapsed? No, that's not how this works. But in the next 12 months, is the Russian economy going to get better? No. And the fact is that what you'll probably see is the Russian financial sector have to take increasingly draconian measures to prevent reality from happening. And ultimately, though, you cannot deny it. You cannot put your head in the sand forever, right? It's like any other disease. You know, you get told by your doctor you have diabetes early, you change your diet, right? You lose the weight, nothing happens. Or you can sit there and go, no, that doctor's wrong. Those doctors don't know bunk. I don't have diabetes. Well, you do. And eventually, you're going to end up in the ER, getting an amputation. And that's the danger that the Russian government is running into, is that the longer they deny reality, the longer they force firms to deny reality, the harder it's going to be, right? And eventually, they're not going to be able to fix their economy like in the US with reliable, straightforward economic data, where firms can fix the economy and recessions get kind of evened out nice and smooth. This is going to be a massive, massive correction. Anyway, guys, I appreciate you taking the time. Hit the subscribe button, and I'll catch you in the next one. Okay. Thanks a lot, guys. Let's see. Thank you to Davidas Palukasas for when will we get your strike gum in the EU? You can already order it in the EU. Go to strikegum.com. It's just not on Amazon. Strike gum in the EU, absolutely. Strikegum.com, just order it. Now, the shipping is pricey because obviously we have to ship it from the United States. So you probably want to order like a tray. Like you're better off doing a tray like once a month or whatever. And Ohms, thanks for becoming a member for 33 months. Absolutely awesome. Just a plumber, thanks for the 25. I'm glad to know you like the stream. That's huge. And Andrew Jacob, a law passed in Russia in 2023 said if you had foreign currency in your bank account, it would just be taxed more or they would just take it. Yeah, that's another perfect example of capital controls, right? And you can see that this isn't new for Russia. These capital controls are really they're essential to kind of fixing the trilemma, so to speak. So Wenzel Coxon, I drone with water, ammo, and strike gum. Dude, hell yeah. Every time a drone pilot tells me how much they love strike gum, it just makes my heart sing, man. And legitimately, if you are a Ukrainian drone unit, I don't know if you guys can get on here, that like strike gum, like DM, send a message to us on strikegum.com or to like our email, and we'll try to hook you guys up. We'll try to figure something out. It can be a little tough. Especially if you guys can shoot us some pictures of strike gum in action. Which, by the way, if you guys are ever doing something cool and fun on a long run or lifting weights, like, cops, anything that shows strike gum kind of in action, man, tag us on social media, tag us on Instagram, or just send us a picture. We'd love to have it. We really love that stuff. So yeah, I appreciate all you guys, obviously. We still have one more story, and it's obviously the one you guys are really talking about, which is of course, the Trump-Alaska meeting, which is going to be just truly going to be one of the meetings of all time. Maestro, eat it before you run? Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Dude, I mean, you can imagine. I have a 6-week-old. Dude, the strike gum is unbelievably clutch. Just absolutely the source of caffeine because it hits faster than coffee. It just does. Can it? The FDA is like, well, I think in general, it's because I think the caffeine absorbs through kind of the lining of the mouth and tongue. At least that's my theory. And that it hits. It's the same caffeine. You're not like ODing on caffeine. It just affects you cleaner, right? All right. Should we crack into the last video, the last story? Is Russia gearing up to make the Alaska Putin-Trump summit a humiliation for the U.S. president? Is he even aware that Russia is hoping to embarrass him? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. Let's talk about it. Okay, so I hate to say I called it, but when I'm right, I'm right. And one of the things that I said was that part of Putin's goal with this Alaska summit with Trump is to embarrass him, is to show to the other countries of the international community that Russia holds all the cards, that Russia can make the U.S. president roll over, bark, and play dead. And he seems to be doing so unbelievably effectively, sometimes to a point that's almost sort of comical. But we're going to break down why he's doing this and all the ways he's gearing up to do it. Let's go. So, first off, according to the White House press secretary, the Trump-Putin summit in Alaska is going to be a listening exercise, the White House says. Her exact statement, right? It's going to be a listening exercise for President Trump. Right? The talks might not produce immediate results, adding that one-on-one discussions are, quote, part of the plan. But the strange part is, as we've talked about, 7 days ago, the plan was to have Putin and Zelensky meet, and the reward was going to be that Putin got to meet with President Trump. Sure, fair enough. That's usually how these kind of things go. But, well, the plan changed, and the plan seems to have changed because Putin demanded that it change. It's reportedly going to be held in Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson in Alaska, right? And Rubio was like, you shouldn't view this as a win for Putin. He says, for President Trump, a meeting is not a concession. But this isn't really how this works, because remember, when you already add conditions to things and then you back off those conditions, you've already kind of flexed on the other person. And it's actually more embarrassing that he's saying it's a listening exercise because, well, let me put it like this. A dictator has just demanded that that the leader of the free world decamp from the White House, fly to Alaska, and then listen to him lecture him for 20 minutes. Is that not what a listening exercise is? Right? To tell him, oh, this is how it goes. This is what it is. So right there, it's already kind of weird. And like, how is the president's time so valueless that he's going to report to Putin just to listen to what Putin has to say, to get lectured at by Putin? Also worth noting, remember, there have been no less than 4 phone calls. Putin and Trump have talked over the phone an average of once a month. So why on earth does the U.S. president have to decamp from the White House, again, fly literally across the country to talk with Putin, something that he's done repeatedly over the phone, right? That alone should tell you something, right? Look at how many businesses in the U.S. have decided that remote work is done. But who exactly makes that decision? Did the workers decide that remote work was done? No. The answer is the CEOs did it. And that's because they're the CEOs. And one of the reasons they do it is because they literally are like, we want to make sure we maintain control over workers. Workers should understand that they work in the place and at the times of our choosing. I'm the CEO, I get to choose. So in this whole relationship, who has gotten to choose where the meeting takes place? Well, seems like Vladimir Putin. Now, what I also thought was pretty comical is this statement here. Trump suggests he'll know if Putin wants a peace deal with Ukraine soon after their meeting. Within 2 minutes, guys. He said, at the end of that meeting, probably the first 2 minutes, I'll know exactly whether or not a deal can be made. Now, bear in mind, this is the exact opposite of what the president said literally 2 weeks ago, in which he said Vladimir Putin does not negotiate in good faith. Vladimir Putin talks a big game and then goes and bombs Kiev or does other actions that are clearly escalatory. So what changed? Why is Putin getting his fourth last chance from the president? And again, this sort of thing, this fourth last chance, is another symbol, right? Like, think about, again, the boss versus the intern. How many interns go and they have a drink after work and they go, man, if that boss talks to me that way one more time, I'm going to tell him to go stick it up his butt and I'm going to walk out of there. And his buddy goes, yeah, you should do that. And then when the day comes and the CEO goes, intern, hey, shorty, hey, nice shoes, loser, get in the conference room. We gotta talk. And he goes, yes, sir. Right away, sir. You're like, of course. That happens constantly. It is the biggest trope in any workforce. But it is because of the power dynamic. It is because it is who controls who, right? And so the fact is that Vladimir Putin gets to ignore Trump's ultimatums repeatedly, that the president himself gets to say, oh, well, this time I'm going to learn for sure. I'm going to really tell for surezies this time. I got to see if he's interested in peace. It's like, weren't you able to infer 2 weeks ago? You absolutely inferred that he wasn't interested in peace. Nothing has changed, but now you're like, well, I'm going to really find out this time. It is difficult to it's difficult to see and respect the U.S. president when he can't maintain a consistent stance. But there's more to it than this, right? There's another layer to the humiliation objectives that Russia is pursuing with this, right? That again, the Trump administration is completely blind to. And that is, as we've talked about, the audience is the international community. And remember, the CEO can abuse the intern. Depending on how powerful the CEO is, he can impose a lot of abuse. So Putin's goal is to see how much abuse he can impose on the president and get away with it, because he wants to demonstrate to the world that Russia is the CEO and the United States is the intern, that Russia is strong, capable, and effective, and the United States is feckless and weak. Because if the U.S. can't stand up to Putin, then why would you be the U.S.'s security partner, right? Why would you do a trade deal with the United States, right? Let's say Russia goes to a country and the United States goes to a country and they say, listen, you can only do a trade deal with one of us, but it's going to be a trade deal and a security deal. Well, what country is going to partner with the United States? Russia's already shown it can get them to do what they want. Bark, roll over, come to Alaska. Negotiate again. No, I won't talk to you. We have to meet face to face. That is going to send a message to these countries that say, listen, whose side do you want to be on? The answer is obvious. If you want to survive as a country, you need to be on the side of the winner. Like, are you really going to back up an intern against the CEO of a company? No, of course not. You're going to side with the CEO because he's got all the power. He can reward you in meaningful ways, and the intern, he just has to take it. And so part of the humiliation goal, I think, for Putin is to get in front of cameras and to lecture Trump about how Russia is actually entitled to Alaska. To say, actually, you think this America thing is yours? It's actually ours. We own America, right? And imagine bringing, again, a guest to your house and him going, your house is nice, but really it belongs to me. Technically, I should own this house. Technically, everything in this house should belong to me. You'd go, if you have a spine, you'd go, hey, buddy, this isn't your house. I think you should leave. Get the hell out, right? Unless that person's your boss, unless that person's a big dog, unless that person's somebody who you have to bend over, roll over for. And then you have to sit there and take it. And so I think that's part of Putin's ultimate goal here. And we can see them ramping up towards it. But let me show you. Here, for example, is all of these statements by Russian ultranationalists about Alaska, right? And it's kind of silly, right? Alaska was for those of you that don't know, Alaska was a territory of Russia in the 1870s, 1880s. That 1867, Alaska was sold to the U.S. by Russia for $7.2 million, about $130 million in today's money. More than 150 years later, Moscow still hung up about it, right? Obviously, because they realized in 1860, Alaska didn't have anything of value. They're like, oh, there's some bears and it's real cold. Then they realized Alaska has a fair amount of oil, and they said, actually, man, we really screwed that up. Because again, it was sold for the equivalent of $130 million in 2024 dollars. Comically little, right? But Russia has been talking a lot about it, about this, what Russia calls its Alaska myth. This is the idea, for example, that in Russian schools, the official line is that Russia never sold Alaska to the U.S. Rather, it leased it for 100 years, and that the U.S. went and forged a contract that said otherwise. Alaska is Russian, according to Russian schools. Right? Of course, Kirill Dmitriev, which is effectively Moscow's liaison to the Trump administration, called Alaska an American of Russian origin. Right? Some Russian patches, for example, even contain a statement that I'll take everything that's mine, implying, again, showing the large borders of Imperial Russia, including Alaska, right? There's also famously a plaque in Crimea left by the Russian military, or not the Russian military, that says that, today Crimea, tomorrow Alaska. So, again, one pro-Kremlin blogger said, for example, quote, "The meeting in Alaska has every chance of becoming historic, that it's proof that a multipolar world is taking shape and that Trump is consciously or unconsciously helping build it." So again, a multipolar world is one in which there is no dominant force, in which the U.S. is at best a peer to a country like Russia, which is just not the case, right? The problem is that one of the... Oh, here's another pro-Russian blogger that literally made up a flag of the independent Alaskan Republic of Russia. Sounds a little bit like the old DPR. Yeah, it sure is. Again, does this mean that Russia is actually going to invade Alaska? No. He's not going to. Right? But here's another billboard from 2022 in Russia that said, "Alaska is ours." There's literally a map showing Alaska. Alaska is ours. And of course, Dmitry Medvedev said in January of 2024 that Alaska would be returned any day. So I think Russia's not going to invade Alaska. That's not important for Russia. The importance is the humiliation factor of getting another foreign world leader. Right? It's one thing, right? The U.S. has said, well, we condemn the fact that Russia annexed Ukraine. But then imagine the U.S. president being unable to condemn Russia talking about annexing his own territory. Imagine having a president. It's like, maybe it's okay if Russia takes Alaska. Maybe it won't be so bad. The problem that we run into is, well, as you can see, Trump himself has said, I'm going to Putin. I'm going to Russia on Friday. Trump is not going to Russia. He's going to Alaska on Friday. Now, you may just say Trump just doesn't remember things so good anymore, which is actually kind of its own problem. As you might recall, the last president had some problems remembering things, and it went pretty badly for him. But it validates a specific claim that the Russians, again, are going to try to push via propaganda. And look, here is, again, Kirill Dmitriev, who is, again, the liaison between the Trump administration and other key figures. For example, he was known to be frequently in contact with Elon Musk. He's the head of the Russian Sovereign Wealth Fund. Note that he has been tweeting for almost a week about all the ways in which Alaska is Russian. He has a compilation of historic Russian Orthodox churches in Alaska. Here's another one, right? Here's another one. 1880. 1860 map labeling Alaska Russian America with Sitka as the capital, right? And of course, here is rolling out an 1876 Treasury warrant for the purchase of Alaska and a Russian envoy's signed receipt, which again is part of this Russian conspiracy, this Russian fiction that technically they actually are the owners of Alaska. And here's again Kirill Dmitriev saying, Alaska, born as Russian America, Orthodox roots, forts, fur, and trade. Alaska echoes these ties and makes the U.S. an Arctic nation. And he's like, let's partner on stuff, right? Which is fine. Good. People are like, you must hate Russia. No, I just want Russia to not stop invading its neighbors, right? Russia can run its own country any way it wants. It just needs to stop, invading its neighbors, paying bounties for the killing of U.S. soldiers, interfering in U.S. elections in a systematic and sweeping fashion, right? So, but you can see, more importantly, that this is something where the Russians are gearing up to push this propaganda talking point. And again, it's not because they want to trick Americans into thinking that Alaska is for sale. It's not because they want to convince Russians that Alaska is totally going to be purchased from the Americans or conquered from the Americans. It's to show the international community who's really in charge. Because here's what I want to point out. You don't need to meet with Putin to tell if they're serious about peace. Because here, from literally yesterday, is the Russian foreign minister stating their position that Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson and Crimea are enshrined in the constitutions and that they are never going to be negotiated away. So again, Ukraine has said swap for swap, territory for territory, dead in the water. Russia has just said territory for territory, dead in the water. And yet Trump is going to go, well, if I could look him in the eye, I'll know something. It's kind of a joke. It'd be a joke, again, if it wasn't our own country. So you can clip it out. You heard it here first. We're going to see Putin probably tried to, again, embarrass Trump by talking about annexing Alaska. And Trump is probably going to just not say anything. Just take it. Just take it. So anyway, guys, be sure to hit that subscribe button. I appreciate you, and I will catch all you guys in the next one. All right. So, of course, guys, before I do anything else, I'm going to answer, any questions you guys dropped in the chat. I wanted to do a shout out. I haven't shouted you guys out in a while because I'm still trying to work out how this what kind of this all is going to look like. But a huge thank you to our Colonel tier members, guys like James J21, Yanko Georgiev, Chris Gorsuch, Paul Templeton, Cytronic, Steve Moran, TR Need, Alan Knutson, CM Holmes. All of our Lieutenant tier members, again, I appreciate you guys, especially as you guys probably know, I talked about it in an earlier video on Combat Vet News. Since my content has been a little more willing to call out misinformation, disinformation, incorrect statements, and just bad policy making about the administration. A lot of my subscribers who are big fans of the administration, right? Part of not just like fans of it, but like, oh, Trump can do no wrong. Trump is above criticism. Those people have been canceling their memberships. They've been unsubscribing. So I'm kind of like, hey, if you want honest content, real takes, data-based stuff, like things, reality, then I'm the channel for you. But if you want me to like glaze the president for, 10 hours a week, don't let the door hit you on the way out. So those of you that have stuck around, I really, really appreciate you. Thanks, Jim Colton, for the 20. Wow. Not even a question. Jacob, you know what this is? It's like when a boomer tells you that for a job, you need to talk to the manager and give him a firm handshake. Yeah, it's a little bit like that. That is kind of how it is. Like Trump being like, well, I'm just going to look him in the eye. And like, I understand that in New York real estate, that might actually be a technique that kind of works. Because sometimes these guys will have layers of people whose job it is to just stop like real decisions from being made. But that's not the case with Vladimir Putin, right? Because nobody jumps without Putin's know-how. And it's a little bit like, it can work if you're buying a condo in Queens, but it would never work with like the CEO of IBM, right? Because the CEO of IBM knows that around him are a bunch of other decision makers who are going to prep him, tell him, hey, this is IBM's official position on this. This is what you have to say in line with your intent. Right? Like organizations, as they scale up, the leadership operates differently. And basically, when you're running a whole country, you can't go off of like vibes or feel or, oh, you know, when you're buying a condo, they go, oh, your offer said this, your email said that. Now I understand what you meant by that. Like that doesn't happen because there are 15 layers of diplomats between the top leadership of a country and the bottom, right? And there's 15 people that cycle through and go, no, you didn't translate correctly. This Russian word actually means this, or this has this implication. It's more negative than you realized, right? But that goes up and up and up. And they have each one of those 15 layers has a counterpart where they call up the Russians and go, hey, man, my junior diplomat told me that you said that you were going to withdraw from Kherson. That doesn't sound right. Is that right? And they go, no, dude, that is not our position. Like, that is not our position. We want the Ukrainians to withdraw from Kherson, right? So normally those sort of things get solved like a layer or two up. And so this idea that you can like, again, do it like a condo deal. Well, just let me meet the buyer. Let me give him a firm handshake and a pat on the back and say, listen, buddy, I want to do a deal with you for this fucking 300 square foot condo in fucking Queens. It's just not how it works. Shout out to the person who's just saying release the Epstein files over and over. Yeah, that's the thing. That's what all this is probably about, right? But clearly they followed their winning strategy of just do some other dumb shit, and then just go from there, right? Like do dumb shit, distract people, make them forget. But here's the other thing I wish I could tell people about the Epstein files. I mean, I guess I sort of did. Is that look at all the links between Trump and Epstein. The sworn statements, the affidavits by the Jane Does, the numerous pictures, the birthday card that they've confirmed exists. Whoa, Jim Cullen, can we donate drones to your channel for Ukraine? No, because the Ukrainian military drones need to be made to Ukrainian military specs, but you can purchase drones and drone defenses for Ukraine. For example, here is the link to our donor box. They're actually doing a match. So for every $1 you can donate to the Ukrainians, they will hook you up. An anonymous donor is going to match it. So definitely do that. Yeah, exactly. Like you look at Trump's own statements, you look at all that and ask yourself, like, what more evidence would you need to believe that Donald Trump like abused women with Jeffrey Epstein? Like what additional information would you need? Because you have a victim who says this happened to me. That victim is credible because she does things like describes the inside of Jeffrey Epstein's apartment accurately, something she could not have known unless she was a part of it. You know, there are pictures of them together. Again, this Wall Street Journal birthday card, which is everyone else who has done it has said it's not fake. The president's denials never made any sense. You know, the birthday card is like, wow, here's a naked woman. Boy, you and me share a secret, and we know what Jeffrey Epstein's big secret was, the trafficking. And then here's a trafficking victim saying I was abused by him. Like, do you need additional evidence? What would the files contain that would sway your opinion? Because according to some polls, up to 45% of Trump voters have said, even if he abused women, even if he abused those girls, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Because what he's doing is so good that it doesn't matter. And I'll tell you this, like, I'm of the belief that the founding principle of America is that no one is above the law. And that whether you're rich or powerful, right? The idea that in America, we have individual rights and equality under the law. And so if you become rich enough and powerful enough that you can do things to those women and never face consequences, then everything else you could do to the country is worthless. It's worthless because it's still not the United States. We're just fucking a reskin of Russia and China at that point. There's nothing special about America. Rich people get to do whatever they want. Poor people do it. And I get it. Like, that's a little true everywhere. But, you know, there's a scale. There's a scale at which it becomes, like, ghoulishly absurd. PV asks, is it over? And what does it's over mean to you? LOL. What is it over? And what does it's over mean to you? It's never over till it's over. I don't know what you're trying to ask me. Whatever it is it over? Probably not. All right, guys. All right, I appreciate you. I appreciate you joining me on this. Be sure to hit the subscribe button. So I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks a lot. Again, let me know in the comments of this video if you enjoyed it, if you thought there was value in it, and I'll catch you guys later. Cheers.